Okay. If you could spell your name for us, say and spell your name.
Conrad Solum, C-O-N-R-A-D-S-O-L-U-M.
All right. And what year did you graduate?
Graduated from undergraduate in 1956.
And you went to University of Southern California?
University of Southern California in engineering school in 1956, and then law school in 1959, also at SC.
What year did you rush?
1952.
You were a freshman in 1952?
Freshman out of high school, right.
And what was Rush like for you in 1952? Can you describe to us what it was?
It was a lot of fun. All the fraternities had parties during the summer, swim parties and that sort of thing, usually at private homes. Not very much, I don't recall anything happening on the row during the summer. I think most of the houses in those days closed up for the summer.
Did you live in the house?
Sometimes, probably about half the time.
About half the time?
Mm-hmm.
What's your fondest memory of living in the house? Like, if you could pick out one day, what do you remember the most?
I don't know that there's one day. There were a lot of great days. I think one of the most fun things around the house back in those days were building the floats for the parade, homecoming parade, in the back parking lot.
What's your worst memory of living in the house?
I guess, well, I don't know. One of my worst memories was picking up a Daily Trojan one morning and finding a picture of some of the frauders running out of a sorority house after a panty raid, and unfortunately they were identifiable and were penalized for it. I wasn't in the photo.
Good for you. We have pictures of you actually in scrapbooks at something called the Townway Turnabout. What was that all about?
Oh, you got me, the Townway Turnabout.
Don't remember that one?
I don't remember what that was.
What about Flapper Day?
Oh, Flapper Day was, it was part of a Trolley's show that was put on at that time, sort of like Songfest is now, but it was a separate show held at the Shrine Auditorium, and different fraternities and sororities put on different skits and that sort of thing.
Do you have a fond Flapper Day memory, like any special theme?
No, we were very competitive in all of those Troleo events. Perhaps the best one we did was using a strobe light effect so that the movements looked like an ancient or an old movie, a flicker look to it. And,
was that the Teak Productions?
Yeah.
Who was the head of that? Do you remember who wrote the script for that, or?
Pete Haymond, I think, was the head of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned homecoming before. It used to be a really grand parade.
Yes.
Down Wilshire,
Yes.
the Miracle Mile. What can you tell us about building the float? Some of your fond memories, staying up late night.
Oh yeah, they were all-nighters. There were some things on the float that you could only have 2 or 3 people working at one area at a time. So to get it done, we had to have a night shift and an all-night shift and what have you.
How long did they take to build?
A few weeks, as I recall. Yeah, yeah, and a lot of planning in advance to
Really?
be able to even do it in a few weeks.
Some
The
of
last week or last few days were really hectic.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Some of the designs were pretty original, and you see, like, throughout the years in the 70s and whatnot, they kind of went back to those designs. What kind of inspiration, or what made you come up with your themes for that kind of stuff?
Well, there was always a theme to the parade, just like the Rose Parade has a theme. And then we had some very talented people in the house, several architects, and they would do the basic design, Dave Oakley and Dick Nolan and some of those guys back in the early 50s. And really, they were elaborate designs, and then some of the engineers and the engineering students in the house would have to try to execute it.
Now, all of those traditions, Trolleos and Homecoming and Flapper Day and those kind of events seem to have died. Do you have any thoughts of why?
I don't know. I think students changed their attitudes, particularly in the 70s, late 60s, early 70s. They weren't so much into doing projects and things as they were into just having fun themselves. The parade went away because we had, as I recall, we had difficulty getting a permit from the cities, and first it stopped. They stopped us from going down Wilshire Boulevard, and it was held on University Avenue 1 year at least, while I was still an undergraduate, and then I think it just kind of died of its own weight. People lost interest in putting in that much effort. We always thought it was a lot of fun getting together and building something together.
The first Song Fest took place in, I believe, 55 or 56.
No, it would have been a little earlier than that, 50, maybe 54.
Did you take part in that?
Yes, yes, and I remember it well. Teak was for the large event with a sorority, and I forget what the category they called that, but we were paired with the Alpha Gamma Delta, and so we had a lot of practices together and all, and we sang It'll Come to Me in a Minute. But it was a great experience for a lot of us that had never tried to sing in a choir or anything else, and to try to put it together and compete.
And the pictures that we saw were pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna throw some names at you, people that we found in the scrapbook from our research and whatnot. What I'd like you to do is tell me what they mean both to you and to Beta Sigma.
You're going to test my memory, which isn't all that good. Not that I don't remember those great old days, but
Sam and S.
Oh, Sam Innes was a world-class class shot putter, and eventually I think won the Olympics once or twice, and was a great asset to the SC track and field team. Sim was kind of finishing his career when I started at SC, and I only met him a couple of times. He never lived in the house, and he was around some, but not a lot. He was perhaps, or he was, the best athlete that we had in the house back in those days, early 50s.
Walt Williams.
Oh, Walt. Walt was active in politics on campus, as many of us were, and journalism major. I think that's what he graduated in, and he was a very interesting, fun guy. Very fun guy.
Wes Gregory.
Wes was very involved in campus politics too, and a little like Walt, very active. I don't remember what Wes majored in, but great guy.
Okay. Bill Hillnick.
Bill was my era, my place class. A really funny guy. He was Yell King in the fall of 1955, and developed some original yells for the football games. I remember one was Adorini, and I don't know, it was just created. It didn't mean anything. It didn't come from any other word as far as I know. But that was a great year, that fall of 55. Not that the team was that good, but Bill was the head Yell King, and I was president of the Trojan Knights. And we used to put on card stunts back in those days. And young people don't know what those are, I suppose, but great big 2 sections of card stunts, and it was quite a project for all of the Trojan Knights.
What did those card stunts say? 'Cause it's been a long time since we've done those.
Oh, they did different things. Sometimes there would be a spell out of from one stunt to the next of something, some theme, or they would have the Trojan chasing a bear or something like that, and eventually sticking the sword in him or something. They were animated, and we'd have about I forget exactly, but somewhere like 30, 35 different stunts, and it was my job and a lot of fun to stand down there on the field and call off the numbers, switch to number 2, to number 3, quickly, everybody to white cards or whatever. And one of the interesting things about card stunts, that year the cards were getting older, and the cards were they were probably 14 inches by 14 inches. They were getting old and mildewy and bent, and we were running out of cards, so some of us, the Trojan Knights, decided might be a good idea to find some way to raise money to buy cards. And there was an alum, SC alum, who had been in the Trojan Knights that worked for Warner Brothers, Wally Wolf, and we got a hold of him, and he was interested, Warner Brothers was interested in promoting a movie at that time. It was coming out, and we were interested in money, so Wally and Warner Brothers were going to pay the Trojan Knights a substantial sum, which would pay for replacing the cards, if we did a few stunts on this movie at halftime. At the time, television was showing our card stunts. Sounded like a great deal to me, until Dean of Men, Bernard Heinck, found out we were doing it and called me in and a couple of others and said, we cannot be commercial with these card stunts. And I told him the only reason we were doing it was to raise money to replace the cards, and he said the university would pay for the cards, so we got our new cards anyway.
Are there any names that you can think of that I'm missing here, that you remember, any stories of?
Oh, there were some, a couple of years before me were a couple of great politicians on campus, Dick Dupar and Ernie Shagg. Unfortunately, Ernie Shagg just died a few months ago. They were well known on campus. Ernie was Associated Men's Students president in his senior year. He was also president of the House at one time. And of course, Jerry Carr, our astronaut, was 2 years ahead of me. It was a class of '54, I think. He graduated, and a true Trojan through and through, and became an astronaut. He was in the NROTC in the Marine side. Went into Marine flying. Gonzalez was the president of the American Men's, Associated Men's Students in '52, I believe it was, '52, '53. And Teak was very active in campus politics back in those days, which campus politics has changed now. You don't have the elected, university-wide elected offices like American Men's, Associated Men's Students, and senators, senator at large, and but we always had very active people in that.
Yeah, I was going to say the 1950s for involvement on campus and basically just for Beta Sigma, they were what I would consider the golden years.
Yeah.
Beta Sigma, like the high times. What would you attribute to that? Why was that?
I think it's just part of the whole 50s. The students were All of us were born before the Second World War. We knew what war was. The Korean War was going on. We just were from a different generation, and we're all very, very interested in working on things. We, would paint the house ourselves. When we wanted to, we decided to add on to the dining room area and built a couple of extra bedrooms upstairs. The brothers got together on a weekend and tore down the old house, which the old front that had to be demolished in order to add on. And we used to do all those things ourselves, which is kind of a lost attitude. And it's just, young people are different now.
Socially, how did Teak do socially back then? You guys were on top of everything else.
Well, during the 4 years I was an undergraduate, it kind of changed. When I first started, we were Teak was very active in politics and intramural activities, intramural athletics. Kind of second class in social as far as who we could get an exchange with, what sororities. And it's simply improved over those 4 years to the point where we were having exchanges with whatever sorority we chose to by 1955, 56, and the brothers were dating girls from all the sororities. It was good, although as it turned out we were dating mostly Alpha Chi's, and one of whom became my wife, and several others became wives of Teaks, like Sam and Joni Smock, and Bar Rustin, and Marilyn, and Ron Galliano, and Linda, and Dick Nolan, who was an architect, and his wife, and there probably are more that I've forgotten.
Now you were one of the most active members of Beta Sigma, even after being an active member. Why come back? Why stick around?
It took me a few years to come back, and George Woolery actually talked me into it, and that was probably the late 60s. I was starting a family and began practicing law in 1960, and it just were busy times. But I always had a very soft spot in my heart for Teak, and it was a great experience for me being in a fraternity, and particularly Teak. That was at this time was very involved in everything, politics, intramural athletics, and yet stressed academics. We had a lot of men that were on NROTC or Air Force ROTC scholarships. They had to keep up their grades. Others were on scholastic scholarships and had to keep up their grades, and so it was a great blend between social and activities and academics, and it was a great experience for me, a great growing experience, a maturing experience, and so I think I always kind of wanted to do more for the house, and so I've been involved for probably close to 30 years now on the board.
Now, you've seen the demographics of Beta Sigma change over the years. You're probably one of the experts on that. What happened, do you think, during the 1970s, the 60s?
In a word, drugs. I'm sorry to say that the chapter got involved in drugs, and many of the fraternities did. I think it didn't hit the sororities as hard. Drugs and the attitude of the students became very complacent towards activities or going to athletic events, football games, or anything. And participating in anything, and all of the fraternities experienced a loss in membership, decline in membership, and they were really very poor times for the system, and that was true across the whole country. It wasn't just USC. Probably USC hung on as better to its fraternity system than other schools. Sororities stayed pretty strong during that period of time. That wasn't when we lost some of the sororities that are now missing.
Okay.
But it was primarily the drug culture, I think, that was going on.
What do you think turned that around? I know you helped turn it around to where it is now.
We just made the decision, the only decision the board could make, and that was to clean house. We didn't realize, as a board, and I was actually chapter advisor at the time, unfortunately not spending enough time there to recognize what the problem was. And we just decided we had to kick everybody out that was not against the use of drugs, and we required them to come in and say to us they were not going to use drugs anymore, or they were out. We ended up with only one member.
With one member? One
member, and yet we had a full house before that. Pretty good membership, I forget, maybe 30, but not, I mean, that was good for those years. So we started over, and started over in a rush program where, which was a brilliant idea by Greg McAndrews, a member of the board, to advertise in the Teak magazine across the country and ask if there were any Teaks that wanted to come spend the summer living in the fraternity house at SC and rush for us. And we got several responses. We had, I think it was 6 or 8 Teaks from across the country, most of whom had just graduated and just wanted to do something for a summer instead of going to work, I guess. Some of which were undergraduates that returned to their schools, but they worked hard all summer long for just free room, and got a good class going for the fall year and for the school year. Rex Rolfe was very instrumental in that. He was from Ohio State chapter, and he stayed around for several years, was chapter advisor, and really was instrumental in building a new, strong, drug-free chapter.
Who was that one member that stuck around?
I don't remember his name. I should, and it's a shame I don't. But I'm terrible at names. Yeah, he should be commended.
What do you see as the direction for Beta Sigma now and in the coming years, being part of the board?
I think Beta Sigma is doing very, very well and going the right direction. They are committed to academics, which I think is the coming trend in fraternities and sororities, if it's not already here. That first and foremost, you're at a university to get an education, and then you try to fit everything else in. And Beta Sigma has been rushing people that can make their grades, that have good academic records, and started a program called the Triangle Achievement Banquet and Awards, where they invite incoming freshmen in the late spring to a banquet based on their academic achievements. Young men that are graduating from high school that have done very well academically, sometimes in athletics as well, and it's just been a good introduction to university for those men, I think, and it sets a tone for the undergraduates that academics is important, and that's true.
That award is named the Conrad Solum Award, is it not?
Yeah, I guess, well, I don't know if that one is. There's a scholarship award in my name, yes.
If Beta Sigma wanted to relive what I call the grandeur of the 50s, your time, what would you have to say to the class of 98 coming in to help them do that?
Get involved. Everybody, every member, and the undergraduate chapter has tried this on occasion of actually keeping track of its members and what activities they're involved in, to make sure that everyone has some activity that they're out there involved with, whether it's intramural athletics or the band or community service or the chess club. Do something. Get to know other people on campus. And there are some things like a parade, float parade or something that I don't think will return. It's just school may be more demanding now than it used to be, although it seemed difficult at the time. And maybe there isn't the free time to spend tens of thousands of man-hours on parade floats or something, but everybody should be involved in something on campus, get to know other people, other fraternity and sorority members, other than just a social level.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to add? I'm out of questions, but do you have anything else that you wanted to say?
I'd just like to say hello to all of the old frauders that were around during the early 50s, and both that were graduating when I came in and were just starting when I left. That takes in probably about 7 years of guys, and I hope I see a lot of you at the anniversary celebration, the 50th anniversary, and hope you're all doing well.